In a world where Heo Seol-Jin feels left out, he finds comfort in action webtoons, where he becomes a brave hero. But when he leaves a comment on Player, everything changes. Suddenly, he's swept into an adventure, facing challenges and discovering his true self. The story begins in the Heavenly Arena Terrarium, where Dean, the number 2 ranked swordsman, faces Na-ji, the top swordsman, for a duel. Looking forward to the fight, Dean rushes in immediately. However, in the blink of an eye, he gets pummeled to the ground. As it turns out, this is all but a webtoon currently being read by a boy named Heo Seol-Jin on a bus. Apparently, he hates scenes where the main character loses, and hence, he condemns the webtoon and posts a negative comment, claiming that he will beat Na-ji himself if his comment becomes the most liked. However, someone is pissed off by his antics and wants to see if he can actually do it. As such, he likes Heo Seol-Jin's comment and starts the chain. Back on the bus, Heo Seol-Jin is approached by Heo Seol-Jin, a popular classmate of his whom he has nothing to do with. There, she sits right next to him and, as they exit the bus, hands him a box of cigarettes out of the blue. Mind you, this is the first interaction they have ever had, and she explains that she wants Heo Seol-Jin to hide this box and return it to her back in lunch since she has been caught by the teachers before and can't keep it on her. Ultimately, he is forced to do her bidding, though he is pretty freaked out the entire day. In class, he looks over toward Heo Seol-Jin, who is surrounded by her friends, the most popular group in the class. As it turns out, the boys in that group are talking about Player, the manga he was reading on the bus. Wanting to join in, he also begins talking about the webtoon, but it looks like no one is interested. I mean, he doesn't even know anyone here yet he's here, yapping. Even Heo refuses to acknowledge who he is, and so he is shunned immediately and, feeling defeated, returns to his seat. All of a sudden, Taewon Kim comes and joins the group, trying to save Heo Seol-Jin. Moreover, it is implied that he is the one who started the like chain on Heo Seol-Jin's comment. Regardless, the day continues and, in gym class, Heo Seol-Jin is bummed about what happened and decides to skip PE, going to hide in the restroom instead. Soon enough, the PE ends and, from inside the stall, Heo Seol-Jin overhears the popular group talking about him, commenting on how he is a freak. Even Taewon Kim calls him pitiful. Nevertheless, the guys leave soon enough, and, on the way out, Taewon Kim, who somehow knew Heo Seol-Jin was hiding in the stall, calls him pathetic. There, Heo Seol-Jin sinks down into despair. He reveals the reason he hates seeing main characters lose to a stronger opponent is because losing in real life is enough. As he breaks down in the bathroom stall, he announces he is sick of this reality. I want to become one too, the main character of the story. Then as it turns out, ask and you shall receive. Somewhere else, an unidentifiable figure grants Heo Seol-Jin's wish. Out of nowhere, thunder strikes the school and Heo Seol-Jin finds himself in the middle of Terrarium. Respond is the lowest rank of class student, and faced off against Na-ji. In the webtoon world, even though Dean gets struck down, it looks like he has achieved something else. He was able to get past Na-ji's absolute domain, her signature move, a feat never done before. However, at that moment, Heo Seol-Jin appeared on stage. His arrival makes it look like he possesses incredible skill, enough to easily get past Na-ji's domain. There, Heo Seol-Jin stands in the middle of the arena, completely unaware of what is going on. Nonetheless, after a bit of thinking, he comes to the conclusion that this is all but a dream, a lucid dream. Hence, he begins acting cocky, and Na-ji takes this as a sign of disrespect and unleashes her true absolute domain, telling Heo Seol-Jin to back down. However, even with her most powerful skill, Heo Seol-Jin stands there indifferent. It looks like he doesn't even feel the aura emitted by her, and seeing this, she gets annoyed. Na-ji then draws her weapon, and this is enough to make her opponent cower in fear. However, he remembers just how bad of a day he was having. In his mind, he doesn't want to run away in this situation, especially since he thinks this is a dream and all. As a result, he instead dashes in to deliver a careless punch, and this was his last mistake. What he didn't know was that the moment Na-ji had drawn her blade, it was predetermined he would be cut down. As he falls to the floor, Na-ji orders the narrator to announce the result of this battle, and so, this ends the story here. But that's just plain boring. The unidentifiable figure from before is seen reading Heo Seol-Jin's story as the protagonist, commenting on how it was no fun. That was different from what he promised. It can't end like this, right? He exclaims with a sinister grin on his face. Meanwhile, Heo Seol-Jin is floating in the dark abyss known as death when he suddenly sees a beam of light. A few seconds later, he once again opens his eyes to find himself in front of a little girl with braids. Confused, he asks where he is, but, in response, the girl begins chastising him with a hand of fire. She announces that she was going to forgive him for staring at her, but he still dares to ask questions. Death is the only fitting punishment for such insolence. But then, a voice tells her to stop, dismantling the flames, and out walks an unidentifiable figure from before, introducing himself as Arthur, the god of this world. What's more, the little girl appears to be a flame spirit of sorts which resides in Arthur's blade. Seeing and learning all this, Heo Seol-Jin is left trembling with fear, asking for forgiveness. There, Arthur realizes that it looks like Heo Seol-Jin isn't aware of his situation. Apparently, Arthur has decided to select Heo Seol-Jin and tells him to become a player. All the while, utter confusion paints our boy's face. Noticing this, Arthur explains that the heavenly arena terrarium is filled with endless gold and treasures, and those who climb the tower are known as players. What's more, Heo Seol-Jin has been hand-selected by the god of this world to become one. And so, without much explanation, he decides to just send Heo Seol-Jin back into the fantasy land once again. But this time, this little sword girl will be tagging along with him. Obviously, they both have qualms about this, but everything has already been planned beforehand. As such, he sends them on their way. As it turns out, the sword girl is named Excalibur, a legendary sword crafted by Arthur himself. Regardless, the duo find themselves amidst a desolate, abandoned town. Not only that, Excalibur's appearance has changed as well, making her seem like an even smaller child. All of a sudden, they are attacked by a large man. Apparently, according to Arthur, it would be no fun to send those two to a random place, and hence, he prepared a tutorial quest. Out of the blue, the man sneaks up behind Excalibur and attacks, sending fearsome blows one after the other. Thanks to Heo Seol-Jin's awareness, he is able to dodge most of the strikes but still sustains some damage. There, Heo Seol-Jin questions the man, asking who he is and why he is attacking them. But that's the same question this rather large man wants to ask. As it turns out, Heo Seol-Jin has landed in the midst of the home of a thief guild by the name of Red Hood. In addition, the man he is facing is the leader of this group, who is also a player. Nevertheless, the price is heavy for startling the group's home base, and the fight ensues immediately. The group decides to jump in all at once, leaving our duo in a world of trouble. Out of desperation, Excalibur resorts to her last option and begins to transform into her sword form. Seeing this, even the thugs are left flabbergasted, exclaiming that it is an ego weapon. Alas, when the transformation is complete, the sword ends up being broken, worn out, and dull, making Heo Seol-Jin realize that he is in trouble. All the while, Arthur is just laughing like a maniac, amused at this situation. According to this sadistic god, an ego sword is a sword with a soul, and possesses the ability to grow stronger with its owner. However, that means with a weakling like Heo Seol-Jin as the master, even Excalibur is utterly powerless. Transforming in such a crappy state, Excalibur breaks down into tears, leading the thieves to think they are just trash. As such, they try to threaten them more, but she has a trick up her sleeve. Using some of Arthur's power she had stored up, she unleashes a strong attack, making the Red Hood crap their pants. But that wouldn't be that much fun, and hence, Arthur prevents her from doing so, resulting in them getting jumped by everyone. Amidst all the chaos, Heo Seol-Jin tries to escape. Of course, he is but a high schooler, and in this situation, he cannot do anything. But he remembers Taewon Kim's words and realizes that if he keeps on running from his problems, things will not change. Back at the battle, Excalibur gets pummeled to the ground as she is about to meet her end. But at that moment, Heo Seol-Jin shows up and comes in between the attack, shielding her using his body. Consequently, they both are sent flying, sustaining heavy damage. As they lay on the ground, she questions why he didn't just flee since he is as useless as he is. However, she sees the pain on his face as tears run down his face. He questions if there is nothing a useless guy like him can do. Seeing his resolve, well, how about we give it a try? She exclaims. Hearing this, Heo Seol-Jin also stands up, and they both join hands. This unleashes a strong burst of power, so much so that the Red Hood leader comments on how this might be as strong as the first-ranking Naji or even stronger. And out of the dust emerges Heo Seol-Jin, along with the upgraded Excalibur. Thinking the opponent that needs to be beaten is my own weak self, he begins moving closer to his foe, and the reason for this power. As for Excalibur, Heo Seol-Jin has taken all her power, even though she wanted to only share about half of it. Seeing this outburst, all the thieves are left trembling, but the leader of the bunch steps forth. Using his sheer strength, he literally rips a boulder out of the ground and chucks it at Heo Seol-Jin. However, much to everyone's surprise, Heo Seol-Jin stands his ground. In the face of death, he marches forward and slices the boulder cleanly in two. What's more, the pressure behind the attack is enough to not only destroy the boulder but also enough to knock out the entire Red Hood group, though he too collapses at the end. All the while, Arthur is watching and is pleased with the results. However, with a sinister smile, he proclaims that finally, all the candidates have gathered. It's finally starting to flow. The time of the world that I created. Meanwhile, back in the fantasy world, Excalibur takes her human form and drags Heo Seol-Jin to a nearby old man, whom she forcibly coerced into giving them a ride. There, while she thinks her master is already dead, Heo Seol-Jin suddenly wakes up and reveals that he remembers nothing. On the other hand, Excalibur is still astonished. According to her, there is no way that someone can wield her and it must have been luck. But still, the fact is the loser Heo Seol-Jin was able to utilize Arthur's true power. Despite the pressure, Heo Seol-Jin didn't kill anyone with his attack. All of a sudden, Heo Seol-Jin recalls something and tells her, at that moment, "Thank you for trusting me." Eventually, the group reaches the village of entry. But as soon as they do so, the old man Excalibur threatens to call the guards. Thinking they were part of Red Hood, seeing Excalibur in the leader's cape, he tries to get them both arrested and the guards surround them immediately. All the while, a mysterious figure is standing on top of a tower watching this ordeal unfold. Despite the circumstances, Heo Seol-Jin refuses to flee. He has already made up his mind about not running away from his problems and instead tries to explain the situation to the guards. However, Excalibur isn't as level-headed as him, and she, on the other hand, jumps in for battle, announcing that the guards have messed up trying to frame her. This results in an all-out war between her and the soldiers, and Excalibur begins pummeling these poor folks to the ground. Realizing they stand no chance, the leader of the group orders a guy named Rand to be called over, and soon enough, this Rand fellow appears from the sky. Out of nowhere, he jumps down and attacks Excalibur. All the while, Heo Seol-Jin is standing back and notices this man coming at her. As such, he calls out Excalibur's name, resulting in her transforming into a weapon and returning back to her master's side. Obviously, being the cocky blade she is, Excalibur claims there was no need for this since she could have taken care of it herself. However, Heo Seol-Jin begs to differ. As a loser, he has one skill mastered, awareness. As the prey, he had to always watch out for the most dangerous guy in class, and his loser senses were telling him, that guy is dangerous. And it looks like he is right. As it turns out, if Heo Seol-Jin hadn't called out for her, she would have been split in two, just like how Rand split the ground into two using just a strip of cloth. Obviously, this leaves Heo Seol-Jin terrified, and he would prefer if they did not fight. There, he gets an ingenious idea, maybe they don't have to fight. I mean, their goal is to climb the tower and win against the first rank, Na-Ji. If so, fighting here now will only prove to be a burden. Alas, as Heo Seol-Jin and Excalibur talk it out, Rand takes advantage of the situation and begins attacking. In his eyes, these two have no right to plead innocent about attacking the city guards, and hence with the verdict of player Rand, a death will be executed. With this, he uses his clothes and constricts Heo Seol-Jin's movements. As he gets trapped by Rand, Heo Seol-Jin feels the immense pressure given off by his opponent. Nevertheless, understanding that resistance is the only chance they have, he decides to finally man up and confront this foe. All of a sudden, he begins harnessing the power of the god within Excalibur, letting out an intense aura. However, just as he is about to take Rand by surprise and attack, he notices some of the other travelers aren't able to escape the fight. This would result in him accidentally injuring an innocent bystander, causing him to stall. Alas, it doesn't look like Rand really cares. At that moment, he jumps up in the air, claiming you two have lost your last chance at victory, and punches Heo Seol-Jin in the face, sending him crashing down. Consequently, Heo Seol-Jin is left unconscious, forcing Excalibur to take human form and protect her master using her body, realizing that she was acting carelessly, and not anticipating anything like this happening. On the other hand, Rand moves in for the kill. However, his attack is deflected by a Makiko, a fluffy, docile, and intelligent mystical beast. This is the same beast the old man was using to draw his carriage. Seeing this, Rand begins to second-guess himself. Even the bystanders are shocked at why such a monster would interfere, and exclaim that even for someone like Rand, attacking a Makiko would be crossing the line, and the fight is ultimately brought to an end. Nonetheless, Rand is not fully convinced. He still smacks Excalibur in the face, making her collapse to the ground, and orders the guards to lock them both up. Later on, Rand informs his superior of this incident, who just begins to laugh out loud. In his opinion, there is no way a Makiko would protect villains, and it's probably the case that Rand just beat up some innocent people again. However, upon seeing the clothing these criminals were wearing, the superior once again begins to laugh out loud. As it turns out, this superior is none other than Dean, ranked second in the world, and he has recognized this tie to belong to the man who got past Naji's absolute domain that fateful day. "I think I need to meet this guy in person," he proclaims. Meanwhile, in the cell, Heo Seol-Jin is left distressed. He blames himself for being in this predicament, and Excalibur's unpleasant expression just makes him more fearful. But, much to his surprise, she suddenly apologizes for acting rashly. Moreover, as a punishment, she even tells her master to hit her, but Heo Seol-Jin suggests they just settle on calling Excalibur Liber from now on, and she agrees. Regardless, it is about time for the dynamic duo to break free from their shackles. Just as Ran and Dean come over to pay them a visit, the duo blasts open a hole in their cell and flees at top speed. However, it is all futile. In a matter of seconds, Ran uses a technique, forcing both of them to the ground. As it turns out, Ran has already marked the duo's clothes and can now control them, leading to Ran making the clothes heavier and stopping the criminals from escaping. There, Heo Seol-Jin tries to clarify the situation, stating that they're here to climb the tower. However, Ran just shuts down his dreams. If what Heo Seol-Jin is saying is the truth, he should quit. The heavily armed terrarium is filled with players, and if they can't face Ran, they will surely meet their end in the tower. "It is impossible for you to climb up the tower," he announces, and hearing this, Heo Seol-Jin begins feeling utterly defeated. All of a sudden, Dean intervenes, telling Ran to stop things here. He comes closer to the defeated boy and asks if he is Heo Seol-Jin. Seeing this familiar figure, Heo Seol-Jin is left speechless and questions if this guy is the same person who was struck down that day at the arena. In response, Dean introduces himself and reveals himself to be the king of the village of Entry. Distressed, Heo Seol-Jin questions what Dean is planning to do with them but soon collapses due to the burden of using Excalibur. And the next thing he knows, he is surrounded by caretakers. Even Liber is feeling relaxed in this place. After his awakening, Ran takes him along with him, claiming Sir Dean is waiting for you. Upon his arrival at Dean's office, he is immediately questioned about his skills as Dean curiously and threateningly asks how he was able to get past Naji's absolute domain. Of course, this makes the already distressed Heo Seol-Jin even more perplexed as he wonders if he should tell him the truth. Even though telling the truth is the best way for him to survive, would Dean even believe him in the first place? A weakling harnessing the power of a god. Yeah, right. As all these thoughts rush into his head, his entire body tense up, and noticing this, Dean pats him on the back, telling him if you don't want to talk, that's fine. According to him, it is common for people to hide their skills before becoming a player, and he only wanted to ask because he was curious. Moreover, he hands back the items they had confiscated from Heo Seol-Jin, revealing that their innocence has been proven. Apparently, the old man, who owned the Makiko that saved him and Liber, confirmed they weren't from the Red Hood. Hearing this, Heo Seol-Jin is relieved that his actions to save the innocent bystanders weren't in vain. My hesitation saved someone, he thinks happily. Meanwhile, seeing his reaction, Dean begins making a sinister grin. There, he asks if Heo Seol-Jin wants to climb the tower and questions why he wants to do so. In response, Heo Seol-Jin boldly announces my goal is defeating Naji, the first ranker. Hearing his resolve, Dean explains that Naji is not a single person. She also commands the Guild Avalon, which is directly under her direct command. Because of this, Heo Seol-Jin's declaration of wanting to defeat Naji is not just targeted towards her, it is targeted towards everything that surrounds her. It is a declaration of war. Understanding this, Heo Seol-Jin begins wondering if he will even be able to do that. A loser like him who couldn't even do anything in his school will defeat the strongest of this world. Just thinking about this makes him sink into despair. However, Dean reveals that he has decided to help Heo Seol-Jin on his journey. As it turns out, their goals are aligned, and he openly accepts Heo Seol-Jin as a comrade. And the first thing is to sign up for the player candidate registration. Anyways, he is allowed to leave for now, and as he exits the gate, Heo Seol-Jin is faced with Ran, who is eavesdropping on their conversation. Outside Dean's office, Ran immediately begins showing malice towards Heo Seol-Jin, asking if he truly believes he will be able to take Naji down. "You trash, do not cross the line," he exclaims, even deciding to show Heo Seol-Jin where he really stands in this world. Suddenly, Liber appears and stops Ran's attack, announcing that they both will become way stronger. Even Heo Seol-Jin chimes in, claiming that we will definitely defeat her. Seeing their resolve and bold claims, Ran decides to spare them for now and keep watch over their actions, though it is just to see how long their insolence will last. Regardless, with Ran leaving them alone, The duo decides to head to the first gateway, where the selection of the player candidates is soon beginning. In a flashback, it looks like the dynamic duo got lost while trying to find the gateway. As a result, they have to aimlessly wander around in the middle of the city. Apparently, all Dean told Heo Seol-Jin was that he could follow others wanting to take the test. But the question is, how on earth will they know who is taking part? As they see the others in the area, they notice an odd duo walking, talking about death and blood. Their creepy and unusual behavior catches Lieber's attention, leading her to realize that these must be the people Dean is talking about. A group of weirdos. Seeing this, she immediately suggests they drop their idea and instead just go back home. Regardless, they eventually reach the testing site. According to Dean, the only criterion for passing the test is being special. If Heo Seol-Jin can show only a bit of the strength he used while busting a hole in the cell wall, he should pass with flying colors. However, this doesn't look to be the case. As it turns out, Momo, the player in charge of the selection, is just doing whatever she wants. By the looks of it, she keeps on failing everyone after just a second of looking at them, without any comments. Of course, this enrages a few of the candidates, but Momo immediately hushes them all up, announcing that anyone who has an issue with this criteria can come at her. Obviously, everyone is left speechless after such a statement. Well, everyone but Lieber begins scolding Momo. Of course, Heo Seol-Jin tries to calm her down, but instead, she turns her fangs toward him, claiming she doesn't want to become a player if that means they will end up like Momo. Hearing all this slander directed at her, finally, Momo has had enough. In a fit of rage, she closes in on Lieber, telling her that if she can even touch a single hair on her head, she will pass Lieber. In response, Lieber, without missing a heartbeat, accepts the challenge, telling Momo you better keep your promise. But just as things get heated, another examinee, the one who was seen laughing creepily previously, decides to chime in as well. Using his ego weapon, he unleashes a strong blow. Seeing this, Heo Seol-Jin immediately jumps into action, telling Lieber to give him a hand or else the others might end up getting hurt from the attack. However, out of nowhere, a young man named Pasties walks into the frame. Telling Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber to share the spotlight with him too, he pushes them back and takes the incoming blow head-on. However, Pasties easily overwhelms the blow, breaking the opponent's ego weapon. On the other hand, a pink-haired elf girl named Ki-na Lilith also decides to jump in, confronting the attackers. Moreover, she warns him to get lost or else he will be left unable to do anything. Apparently, the attackers' rampage even got many others caught, leading to them all wanting to end this guy. As a result, the attacker is dragged off by the guards. Nonetheless, although this problem ends, another arises. The examinees ask about what will happen now, questioning if they will have to line up again and be subjected to this whimsical judgment once more. This leads to the examinees talking crap about the test, but all this does is make Momo even madder. But not actually. As it turns out, the criteria to pass this test was to resist. Momo reveals that those who just follow the rules placed on them on a whim aren't fit to become players, and hence, everyone here, who has been voicing their complaints, has passed. However, Ki-na then points out yet another issue. If this is to be done, the passing rate will be too high. And, as per Momo, if this happens, she will have to write an explanation letter. Of course, she doesn't want to deal with all that hassle, and so she makes a gamble. She orders Lieber and Heo Seol-Jin, who are the ones who initiated this resistance movement, to showcase their skills. If you meet my expectations, then I promise to pass everyone here, she announces to the crowd. Hearing this challenge, the dynamic duo couldn't be more ready. They both prepare themselves, and Heo Seol-Jin summons Lieber in her sword form. As this happens, they both let out an extremely powerful aura. Sensing the sheer intensity of the shockwave, everyone standing in the testing site is left watching with their jaws on the floor, wondering if they are witnessing an ego weapon. However, they are all blind to reality. As the dust settles, out comes Heo Seol-Jin, with the broken, beat-up version of Lieber in hand. Obviously, the examinees are left crying with laughter, whereas Momo gives them 10 seconds to correct their mistakes. During these precious seconds, both Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber lose their minds. Apparently, it is Heo Seol-Jin who has Arthur's power inside him, although he doesn't understand how to harness it. At that moment, Heo Seol-Jin is left to impress Momo all on his own. The time continues to tick, but he has nothing of worth to showcase. However, it looks like he actually does. In the first place, he is a human from another world, which is quite impressive in of itself. And so, he proudly pulls out his smartphone and presents it to Momo. Seeing this, Lieber gets enraged and begins scolding Heo Seol-Jin for his lame exhibition. On the other hand, out of nowhere, Momo passes everyone. Apparently, she knows what a smartphone is, even though no one else is aware. Hearing this, the crowd erupts into cheers, since they have all passed, whereas Heo Seol-Jin is left with more questions. However, due to the commotion, he is unable to talk with Momo and she disappears into thin air. Later on, he even goes to Dean's office and asks if he knows what a smartphone is, and he, despite being the second ranker, is unaware. This leads Heo Seol-Jin to the conclusion that there must be others like him in this world. All the while, it looks like a spy has been tailing Heo Seol-Jin the entire time. This spy tells everything he has learned about the existence of this special item called a smartphone and the relationship between Heo Seol-Jin and Dean to a dangerous-looking group. This is the same group Heo Seol-Jin encountered previously, and they, after disposing of this spy who has fulfilled his role, begin their plan. The leader orders his men to retrieve it, and as for anyone who tries to interfere with the plan, kill them. And so, the Crow Mask group begins collecting information and learns that Dean is nowhere to be seen around, just as they had expected. With this, their sinister plan is set in motion. On the other hand, Dean hands Heo Seol-Jin a bill to cover all the expenses he and Lieber are liable for. This includes the medical bill of the injured guards, the cost of repairing the cell, and even their bail. Obviously, Heo Seol-Jin is left freaked out, but Dean tells him not to worry. Even though it is a hefty amount, they should be able to clear it in 3 months. However, there is a faster way where they can repay all their debt within a week. And of course, Heo Seol-Jin immediately prefers this instead. But, as it turns out, this method involves the dynamic duo following Ran around the city. Even Ran is not amused by this idea and tells them to follow him without making a ruckus. As awkwardness paints the atmosphere, Ran wonders what Dean is thinking. In a flashback, he was ordered to let Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber follow him on patrol around the city. According to Dean, he wants to keep a watch on them both himself, but he needs to leave the village for a while. His left arm, which was chopped off by Naji that day, is finally ready, and he needs to go retrieve it from the 15th floor. And this brings us here on the patrol. As they walk around, Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber see how much love all the citizens, including the children, have for Ran, who is deemed as their protector. Learning this, Heo Seol-Jin asks if Ran became a player in order to protect the village, and Ran replies, "Yes, I am doing this for them." He would just be an ordinary human without his player powers, and all he is doing is following the wishes of those who acknowledge his worth. In order to condemn evil in the weak's stead, I became a player, he proclaims. However, Heo Seol-Jin cannot agree with this belief. To him, that is not what the people really want. They do not want evil to be condemned for them. All of a sudden, there is a huge explosion in the nearby market. As chaos ensues, Ran is left enraged, and the ones responsible, the Crow Mask group, whose leader tells everyone to prepare to move and leave Heo Seol-Jin to me. Witnessing this unfold, Heo Seol-Jin asks where Dean is, but Ran explains that Dean is currently not in the village, and this is exactly why these cowards have chosen to attack today. Consequently, he orders Heo Seol-Jin to go and call the guards, and he jumps headfirst toward this heinous group. As he dashes to confront these criminals, Ran condemns himself for allowing this to happen. He knew something would have happened since Dean was not around, and he should have paid more attention to prevent such a tragedy. However, someone gets in his way. A white-haired boy, along with 2 men, surrounds Ran and pounces on him all at once. Nevertheless, Ran is no mere pushover. He is known as the guardian of the village, and without even breaking a sweat, defends off their attacks. Moreover, he even manages to knock out the 2 men with a single blow, telling the white-haired boy, "I shall execute you." As such, both powerhouses go all out and clash with each other repeatedly. But, despite all the efforts, it appears as though Ran has the upper hand. Even though some more henchmen join in on the fight, they all eventually get overpowered, and Ran constrains the white-haired boy. Regardless, the foe announces that Ran has already lost. Their team has already achieved their goal. On the other hand, Lieber and Heo Seol-Jin are confronted by the leader of this Crow Mask group. There, Lieber notices that they have already been surrounded by them, and Heo Seol-Jin questions what they want. As a result, the leader reveals that their group is the one who in fact started the fire, and demands Heo Seol-Jin hand over the smartphone, telling him that if you do, then I'll let you go alive. And that is obviously a lie. Meanwhile, Dean is on the 15th floor, getting his new hand connected properly. There, he asks his mechanic, Mary G. Zenos, if she knows what a smartphone is. Hearing this, Mary replies that it is rumored to be a special item that can evoke power from within the user. However, she suggests Dean best not get involved with an item like that. And it looks like her warning has merit since Heo Seol-Jin is currently in hot water precisely because of this. Out of desperation, Heo Seol-Jin tries to stall for some time but gets smacked in the face. The leader of the group tells him not to try anything funny or else he will meet his end. Seeing this, Lieber tries to stand up for her master, but Heo Seol-Jin tells her to just do as they say. Just trust me. As such, he takes out the smartphone and hands it to the leader. However, at that moment, a child comes up to them, telling them to stop standing around and run. Seeing this child here, the leader gets enraged and tries to kill her, but Heo Seol-Jin stops him from doing so. In addition, he throws the smartphone toward Lieber, telling her to grab it and run. This causes the entire group to gang up on Lieber, and they manage to overpower and constrict her. Nevertheless, it appears as though this is all a part of Heo Seol-Jin's plan. As Lieber gets captured, Heo Seol-Jin summons her in her sword form, and his plan to gather all the enemies in one spot has been accomplished. With this, one swing is enough to blow you away. On the other hand, sensing this extreme aura, Ran notices that Heo Seol-Jin is the one responsible for it. Back in the alleyway, the leader of the group wonders if this power is because of the rumored abilities of the smartphone, but decides against it, realizing the item has not changed. And so, he questions how Heo Seol-Jin obtained that power. However, in response, the dynamic duo claims that is none of your concern as they unleash a fierce slash toward their foes. All the while, Kina, the elf girl from the testing site, is seen witnessing the fight. I found them, she proclaims. Regardless, due to Heo Seol-Jin's one-hit attack, things were greatly impacted and it would affect events that would later occur in the future of the village of Entry. Out of the blue, members of the Avalon Guild appear and take control of the village's defense from Ran. Although Ran is reluctant, they claim this is not an option. It is an order. In a flashback, after Heo Seol-Jin unleashes his fearsome blow, the nearby area is left in ruins, including all his foes. Nevertheless, he notices that Lieber has gone all quiet. Even though he is calling out to her, she is not responding. But still, he has to get to a safe place for now and, using this chance, tries to flee the scene with the little girl. However, as he runs, the leader gets back up again for round 2. This results in yet another clash between the two and again, Heo Seol-Jin manages to make contact with his foe. Alas, he is already exhausted from the earlier attack, and this time, his blow is not nearly as strong. As a result, the opponent doesn't go down, announcing I still haven't repaid my favor to that person. On the other hand, Heo Seol-Jin is left drained. On the verge of passing out, he falls to his knees, expecting this to be his last few breaths. But suddenly, out of nowhere, Kina makes her entrance. Seeing her power, the leader decides it's best to escape from this situation. Using a getaway he prepared beforehand, he flees into the underground, announcing my name is Mescal. Someday, I will definitely kill you and take away that power. Meanwhile, as Mescal rushes away in the sewers, the Avalon Guild member from before is seen in the sewers as well, with a smartphone in hand. That too an iPhone. I knew Apple was up to no good. Damn, Apple users. In the past, Mescal had nothing, not even things others take for granted. Hence, he started to steal and kill in order to survive. However, in neither life, no matter how much he claimed he would stop, he was never able to do so. The reflections in the eyes of the men he killed were like a deadly curse placed upon him. But that is when he met that person. That person showed Mescal compassion, telling him that they both are the same. He announces, I will provide you power and people. All you need to do is bring me that item. Regardless, it looks like Mescal has achieved the desired result. He has managed to take the smartphone. With this, he hopes to finally be able to repay his favor. All of a sudden, a red beam of light appears and pierces Mescal's body. However, Mescal refuses to die down, not when he is so close to his goal. Nonetheless, he is brutally overpowered by the Avalon member, who relentlessly unleashes his attacks one after the other until nothing is left of him. And so, he then grabs the smartphone and begins to grin sinisterly. On the other hand, back on the surface, the rest of the Avalon Guild members are baring their fangs against Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber. Avalon tries to act under the guise of maintaining the public security of the village of Entry. However, both Kina and Ran are fully aware that this is nothing but nonsense. There, Kina tries to stand in the guild's way, but Ran is not able to do the same. As the representative, if he acts out and breaks the pact the village has with Avalon, the guild will be able to invade them and seize control. As such, he can only place his hopes on Kina. But, as it just so happens, Kina is not alone. Pasties shows up, along with other player candidates, to aid Heo Seol-Jin. And so, things begin getting serious. Suddenly, the Avalon member receives a message from their leader, telling them to put their plan on hold, and, as a result, the fight is postponed. With this, the ordeal comes to an end and a week passes. Eventually, Dean returns back to the village where he is left infuriated after seeing the state of things, questioning who did this. On the other hand, Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber have finally started to recover as well. However, Lieber seems to be disheartened by the fact she lost consciousness during the fight. As they both bicker, Pasties suddenly walks in with get well soon gifts. There, as they sit and chat, Heo Seol-Jin questions who the people who attacked the village were, and Pasties replies that that is unknown. Only one thing is certain, there is more than one suspicious factor. Even the captured criminals all disappeared, as if they evaporated into thin air, leaving behind just their clothes. With this, Heo Seol-Jin then tries to learn more about the tower, but Pasties refuses to answer any questions about this, claiming when anything related to players comes up, we are to be considered enemies. With this, Pasties begins to take her leave, but just then, the other candidates also arrive to meet Heo Seol-Jin. On the other hand, hours earlier, Ran is seen reflecting on his actions. Even though he deemed himself competent, in the end, he was saved by Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber. As such, he too shows up at the hospital and bows down to the player candidates, thanking them all. According to Ran, if they weren't there, the entire village might have been destroyed. Nevertheless, Ki-na suddenly walks in as well, prompting Ran to take his leave. With this, he then goes to meet with Dean, who is seen trying out his new arm. And man does it look badass. Back in the hospital, Ki-na delivers Heo Seol-Jin his smartphone, revealing it was found in the sewers, and takes her leave. However, this leaves Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber perplexed. After all, they just fought a fatal battle all because of this, and yet it was lying around. All of a sudden, the phone begins to ring, leaving Heo Seol-Jin in a cold sweat. Anxiously, he answers the call, only to hear a familiar voice on the other end. And whose voice does the voice belong to? Taewon Kim, who is the Avalon group leader. It's been a while. I should visit you soon, right? He proclaims. The smartphone is the sole item that connects Heo Seol-Jin to his original world. Just having it gave him hope that he might be able to meet with someone from his world. However, little did he expect this someone to be Taewon Kim. Later that night, they both meet up at a park. There, Taewon Kim doesn't waste a second and gets onto the topic at hand, claiming that he has heard Heo Seol-Jin is posing as him, just like last time. He asks if he has to clean up after Heo Seol-Jin yet again in this world, and hearing all this, Heo Seol-Jin reluctantly apologizes. Seeing this, Taewon announces that Heo Seol-Jin is the same as always, pathetic. Nevertheless, he is willing to let it slide, especially since this isn't the first time Heo Seol-Jin tried to pull something like this. However, in exchange, he wants Heo Seol-Jin to not come to the player exam, but that is something he refuses to do. In addition, he throws his smartphone into the lake below, stating that he never tried to impersonate Taewon Kim. Seeing him retaliate, Taewon proclaims you have changed. But, as a result, he will personally make sure Heo Seol-Jin is not able to climb the tower. With this, he begins closing in to attack. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Ran jumps in between the two and attacks Taewon. There, he claims Lieber is worried about her master and tells Heo Seol-Jin to return to the mansion. And so, he then turns his hands toward Taewon. Obviously, using skills against civilians violates the rules, and hence, Ran announces I will proceed with the enforcement of the rules. But also, this will not be possible for Ran. Without breaking a sweat, Taewon is able to tear apart the cloth Ran had strengthened using his skill, and tells him to bring Dean over if he wants to win. Regardless, Ran continues to push forward, keeping up the pressure. But this is all futile. Effortlessly, Taewon dodges all the blows and even manages to come closer. According to him, Ran's skill, although interesting, is useless in close-quarter combat. However, this doesn't seem to be entirely true. Using his mastery over cloth manipulation, Ran is able to create an opening to sneak behind his foe, and delivers a devastating combo, sending the enemy flying off. Nevertheless, the fight is still far from over. Soon enough, Taewon gets back up and this time, harnessing the power of the smartphone, copies Ran's skill, asking is this how you do it? Witnessing this, both Ran and Heo Seol-Jin are left flabbergasted whereas Taewon prepares to end things once and for all. However, out of nowhere, Dean appears, sitting on the rail next to Taewon. He asks if this blonde is the rumored rookie whereas, seeing the rank 2 in the flesh, Taewon comments on how he is exactly how he is described in the webtoon. However, as soon as he takes notice of Dean, he unleashes a fury of attacks. Even though Dean was right in front of him, Taewon was completely unaware of his presence. Moreover, keeping in mind Dean's mechanical swordsman class, he needs to be careful of Dean's new robot arm and maintain some distance. But actions speak louder than words. Of course, the second-ranked player in the entire world is no mere pushover and easily sneaks up behind his opponent, almost mocking him. In response, Taewon tries to constrain Dean's movements, but instead of getting worried, Dean is all nonchalant, questioning if Taewon took Ran's permission before using his skill. Obviously, the cocky Taewon begins answering back. In his mind, although Dean reacted in time, it was still a close call. This makes him think that just maybe he has a chance. Dean is the person closest to Naji, and if he can beat him, there is a chance he might be able to face her. Also, words are cheap. Hearing him talk back, Dean announces you sure are lacking in manners and closes the distance. With this, wanting to fix this nasty attitude of Taewon, he decides to give him a beat down. As a parent would to a child, he lightly flicks at Taewon's forehead. However, this is the second strongest in the world we are talking about. Just a forehead flick has enough force behind it to send Taewon flying back and leaves him devastated, unable to even properly stand back up. Also, this is only the beginning. Though Ran warns Dean to not go overboard, things continue with the same intensity. However, is that really a wise decision? As per Taewon, if they keep fighting, the village behind them is surely going to get demolished. Nevertheless, he has no intention of stopping here. He is determined to keep track of Dean from now on and perhaps for the battle ahead. However, hearing Taewon talk about the village, Dean gets pissed off. Alluding to a menacing aura, he gets closer to his foe, and his aura is so fearsome that even Taewon is left unable to move even a muscle. Nonetheless, at that moment, the rest of the Avalon squad arrives in sight, bum-rushing Dean. Even though Ran intervenes and stops them, Dean warns them to not act out of line since he is in a foul mood and will not play along with Avalon's gimmicks like he usually does. As such, one of the members apologizes for their leader offending Dean, the representative of the city, and wants Dean to let them leave the area in peace. Of course, Taewon is against this, claiming he has no intention of running away. But as it turns out, this is an order from the vice captain and he will have to comply. Apparently, Taewon is not familiar with the non-aggression pact and the regulations between Avalon and the village of entry. Moreover, Avalon is not asking this incident to be covered up, and according to the regulation, we will pay the price. Whatever that may be, is what the vice captain has announced. And so, Dean is forced to let these Avalon members go and begins heading back. As he does so, Taewon exclaims that he will regret his decision to pick Heo Seol-Jin. Regardless, with this, the ordeal comes to an end. Later that night, Heo Seol-Jin, unable to sleep after feeling utterly defeated, decides to pay Ran a visit in the middle of the night. Apparently, he has asked Ran to train him. Hearing this, Ran states that being already strong and acting rashly will not do anything. But Heo Seol-Jin exclaims that Lieber is the one who is strong, not him. Hence, he tells Ran to keep going until he is able to hit him at least once. Seeing the determination on his face, Ran agrees, and the two begin fighting. But, as expected, Heo Seol-Jin is just getting the crap beaten out of him. Despite this, he refuses to go down and things continue like this until the crack of dawn. And Ran has finally had enough. He tells Heo Seol-Jin to stop this right here. Not being able to hit his target even once, Heo Seol-Jin is left even more desolated. I want to get stronger, he proclaims with tears in his eyes. All of a sudden, Lieber comes strolling in. She too looks to have tears running down her face. There, she claims that the weakling is not Heo Seol-Jin, but herself. If only she didn't break her arm like a moron back then, she would have been able to stand alongside Heo Seol-Jin. And they both begin to argue and bicker, just like usual. Seeing this heartwarming scene, Ran is left touched and tells them in order for you two to get stronger, I will work with you. And hearing this, the dynamic duo is happy as can be. That same day, in a local tavern, a group of the player candidates are seen having lunch and chatting. There, they gossip about the new rumors that have popped up. Apparently, the news about the smartphone and its power has begun circulating, and it is already used by a guy from Avalon. As such, Heo Seol-Jin, who also possesses a smartphone, is suspected of posing as a member from Avalon, and hence, some members were sent here to confront his lies. In other words, he got on their bad side. However, this is all just a theory one of the guys has come up with and is telling the group about. There, Ki-na seems to be paying close attention to this story, making the boy think that maybe she is interested in him. And so, in order to try and make himself look like a Chad, he begins talking crap about Heo Seol-Jin, commenting on how he only relies on his items but in reality is nothing but a powerless wimp. However, hearing all this, Kian immediately stands up and leaves, announcing that he has no time for idle chatter, leaving the boy, whose name is revealed to be Shannon, in ruins. With Ki-na's departure, the rest of the group also takes their leave, putting the bill on Shannon's shoulders. As they walk out, the oh-so-observant pasties suddenly asks Kian if she likes Heo Seol-Jin. Obviously, this warrants a rather violent response, but Ki-na reveals that she just hates when people talk trash about others without knowing the whole situation. What's more, they don't really have the luxury to be standing around, gossiping. There are only 10 days left until the final candidate exam. On the other hand, Ran, accompanied by Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber, announces that we will now begin the special training. There, both Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber are left in awe by the gorgeous view of the tower. As it turns out, this place is the closest place to the tower in the entire village. Learning this, Heo Seol-Jin questions why Ran has chosen this to be their training ground, but he explains that it would be much faster for the rookies to just experience what he is talking about. All of a sudden, using his skill, he slashes the ground, creates a line, and tells them to try crossing it. And the ever-so-confident Lieber is up for the challenge without hesitation. However, as soon as her foot crosses the line, she immediately feels a shock through her entire body, causing her to collapse to the ground. Observing this, Heo Seol-Jin is left disturbed, but Ran tells him that it is now time for him to do the same. And so, gritting his teeth, Heo Seol-Jin dashes toward the line. Alas, he meets the same fate as Lieber. An intense shock overwhelms his entire body, and he remarks that this sensation is just like that. And before you know it, he once again opens his eyes. As he reawakens, Ran explains why all of this happened. While the duo stepped across the line, they entered into a new area. This is the domain of the Heavenly Tower, Terrarium, he announces. This area is still influenced by the tower, even though it is not inside the tower. As a result, players have denominated this area as a domain. And the reason for bringing the rookies here, firstly, it is just to get them accustomed to the intense pressure of the tower's domain. But, more importantly, he wants to make them understand the most significant characteristic of the heavenly arena. The concept of death does not exist in the tower. However, there is a catch. If one's body does meet its limit, then they will have to pay a price. And as per Ran, in layman's terms, one will lose a small amount of their memories. Hearing this, Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber are left feeling anticlimactic. I mean, isn't this a good deal? But that is not the case. Ran claims that rookies usually have a similar reaction at first, but it would be much faster for them to understand via first-hand experience. With this, he leads them to a cliff named the Forest of the Defeated, a place for people who have ignored the significance of the consequences. But that's not all. It just so happens that these defeated will also be the duo's training partners. All of a sudden, he pushes them both off the cliff, telling them to try your best to survive. Ran has set up markings within the forest, and the goal is to collect them as fast as possible. As the duo falls, Ran states that, although harsh, this training is to make sure they both develop and advance rapidly in this limited time. Moreover, if they can't deal with this difficulty level, they would best give up, since those people are the dropouts who failed to become players. So you are telling me these zombie-looking things are humans? Yeah, right. As soon as they land on the top of the cliff, the monsters rush toward them from all sides. Seeing this, Heo Seol-Jin loses his mind and begins to panic, telling Lieber to get up or else they are going to get ripped to shreds. However, by the looks of it, the fall has taken its toll on her. Lieber is on the ground, almost unconscious. Nevertheless, Heo Seol-Jin claims that if she can just transform into her sword form, he will take care of the monsters, and they do just that, thinking they have to deal with this horde all at once since they have to complete Ran's mission as soon as possible. Alas, things don't always work out as planned. In this desperate moment, the transformation fails the duo, and Lieber turns into her broken and beat-up version. All the while, Ran is overseeing the action and sees his students fail. Apparently, if Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber played well, with just a bit of luck, they would have succeeded. However, the Forest of the Defeated is not child's play. If they still haven't realized their own potential, they don't stand a chance. Back in the forest, Heo Seol-Jin begins to flee from the impending doom, whereas Lieber is still feeling out of the loop. All of a sudden, he opens her eyes and realizes he's dead. Nevertheless, with her returning to her senses, she is raring to go and ready to eliminate these monsters. But when she opens her eyes, she finds herself secluded on top of a tall building. In addition, she looks to be in her adult form, wondering what on earth she is doing. As it turns out, Excalibur was a god's ego sword, and her job was to keep sitting here, holding down the fort for an indefinite amount of time. There, Excalibur begins to miss her original master, the god, and questions if he might have forgotten about her, making her feel betrayed and alone. But despite this, she tries to keep herself cheered, claiming that she will totally ask for that favor from God whenever she sees him again. In her mind, she vows to keep on waiting for him, no matter how long he might take. She is now used to this isolation and proclaims, "Next time, I'll definitely ask for you to give me a name." As sadness covers her face, she exclaims she doesn't want a weapon name, like Excalibur, but rather she wants her own name, one that nobody will forget. All of a sudden, she is brought back to reality after hearing Heo Seol-Jin call out to her. As it turns out, Heo Seol-Jin has been pushed into a corner by the horde of monsters and is desperately trying to wake Lieber up. And, after finally hearing back from her, he is relieved. There, he tells her to transform into her sword form once more since he doesn't want to give up in this situation. "We can do this if we do it together," he announces, and these words give Lieber a sense of togetherness. As commanded, she transforms into Excalibur once again, and this time, they manage to unlock her original form. As such, they both combine their strength and unleash a powerful blow, leaving all the foes in front of them in ash. As the dust from that attack settles down, Lieber suggests they get a move on before more of the monsters come their way. However, as expected, the attack has taken a heavy toll on Heo Seol-Jin, who is on the verge of passing out. Nevertheless, even in that state, he notices something about Lieber. Her hair has grown. As you might remember, ego weapons grow alongside their master, and this is an example of that. On the other hand, it looks like Dean has decided to join Ran in observing this battle. There, he is left impressed by the skills the rookies have shown, but he still has some qualms about the method. In the blink of an eye, he bears his anger toward Ran, grabbing him by the collar and asking why he left those two in that godforsaken forest. "What's the reason you left those two to die there?" he questions. Regardless, 56 hours have passed since the dynamic duo entered the Forest of the Undefeated. One night, Heo Seol-Jin expresses how weird this place really is. Even though they have been here, fighting for several days, he doesn't feel hungry in the slightest. On the other hand, sleeping has become essential. After a certain period of activities, one's body automatically shuts down, and one will fall deep into slumberland, just like how Lieber is now. Not only that, apparently, it also heals some of your wounds. However, this feature might also be the same for the defeated. They too hide themselves at night, making Heo Seol-Jin think that this is the best time for them to go and search for the cloth Ran ordered them to find. However, he doesn't want to wake up Lieber, especially when she is sleeping with such a peaceful expression on her face. As a result, he decides to just get some more shut-eye instead. Nevertheless, the next morning, it looks like he has barely slept. As it turns out, he had a bit of a special dream yesterday where Lieber made a cameo. Seeing his current state, Lieber asks if he is doing alright, and he dismisses the question, hesitant in revealing she came to him in his dreams. I mean, it is pretty embarrassing to say that sort of stuff to a girl. Anyways, they both begin their day. It is explained that, after some discussion, the two finally began understanding their power, and have decided what to do when a defeated appears. According to him, the reason why Lieber's beat-down version is usually summoned is because neither of them has aligned their purpose, and so they have made an agreement: when using a sword attack, select only one target. This is the condition for using Heo Seol-Jin's abilities, and he has finally begun to understand it a little bit better. Just the same, Heo Seol-Jin wakes up again after some rest, and thanks to this, they both confirm that one usually passes out for 3 hours. However, it's longer than what Heo Seol-Jin thought, and he questions how she measured the time without a watch. To this, Lieber replies that she often used to keep track of time since she had nothing much to do in the divine realm to kill time. Hearing this, Heo Seol-Jin realizes that the dream he saw last night was not a dream, rather, it was Lieber's memory. But still, they have a more important task at hand. Heo Seol-Jin begins talking about how he wants to learn more about his powers. Inside his mind, when he first came to this forest, he realized just how little he knew about his own abilities, as well as about his partner. Seeing him in deep thought, Lieber begins teasing Heo Seol-Jin. She claims that the reason Ran put them in this forest is that he wanted Heo Seol-Jin to grasp his potential. With this, they both get ready for another day and decide to check out the middle of the forest, thinking this might be where Ran must have hidden the cloth. Heo Seol-Jin even saw a large open space there when he was surveying the surroundings from on top of a tree. As such, the duo kicks their plan into action. Alas, things aren't all sunshine and rainbows. Out of nowhere, a huge, terrifying monster appears behind the duo. What's more, it looks like Ran's cloth is tied to this fearsome monster's arm. Upon seeing the beast, Heo Seol-Jin calls out to Lieber, telling her to watch out, but it is too late. In the blink of an eye, she gets her skull crushed, and Heo Seol-Jin too meets the same fate soon enough. Fortunately, they are within the tower's domain and hence, they cannot die. As a result, they open their eyes again and immediately head towards Ran. There, enraged, Heo Seol-Jin grabs him by the collar and condemns him, asking, "How dare you tie it to a monster?" He is furious at what Lieber had to endure, but Ran remains indifferent. With a straight face, he asks if they are just going to give up in this situation, but pissed off, Heo Seol-Jin doesn't want to listen to a word he says. Angrily, he tells Lieber to follow him into the forest, but Ran stops him, asking what he plans to do if they encounter that monster again. But what can he even do? As per Heo Seol-Jin, the monster was too fast and too strong for them. There's no way to stop it. However, even Lieber is gazing at this thought process. She announces that they have been trying with all their might to advance their skills, especially Heo Seol-Jin, who is trying to learn how to use his abilities. But Ran is not amused and asks if that is all that they need to know. Hearing these words, Heo Seol-Jin begins to connect the dots in his mind. This time, with a calm demeanor, he once again tells Lieber to follow him, and they both head into the forest. There, Heo Seol-Jin asks himself if he has become conceited. Yes, his powers are different from the others in this world, but still, it would be a miracle if what he is thinking would work out. But, as per him, Ran hasn't gone senile yet. He couldn't give us a task that is impossible to complete, he thinks, and so, he once again faces the terrifying monster and walks closer to it. Seeing this, the monster initially tries to attack. However, out of the blue, Heo Seol-Jin simply introduces himself. Much to everyone's surprise, hearing the introduction, the monster begins to chuckle and asks the reason Heo Seol-Jin tries to converse with it. As a result, he explains that this monster was someone he could talk to. If this wasn't true, there is no way Ran would have been able to tie the cloth on the beast's arm so neatly, and his assumption is proven to be correct. All of a sudden, the monster's body begins to crumble, and from within, a horned demon girl walks out. After revealing her true form, the demon girl simply hands over the cloth to Heo Seol-Jin. Obviously, he is left baffled by this. After all, he spent all this time trying to get his hands on it, and this is it. Apparently, Ran just told this demon girl that she was doing what Ran asked her to, making Heo Seol-Jin think, "That's it. Isn't this too easy?" Regardless, all's well that ends well. Though anticlimactic, he did go through a lot of pain to achieve his goal, and he should be positive about it. Soon enough, Lieber comes to his side, angry at his antics. There, all of a sudden, the demon girl begins warming up. Now that her task has been accomplished, she wants to end things. In the blink of an eye, she partly transforms into her monster form and grabs Heo Seol-Jin by the throat, pinning him to the ground. As her eyes turn red with rage, she questions if Heo Seol-Jin knows how many of her precious children he has killed. In her eyes, all the defeated monsters were like her children. On the other hand, Ran is notified that the real training has begun. In a flashback, we learn that when Dean came to confront him, Ran claimed this all to be training. He reveals to Dean that those two wanted to get stronger and came to ask for his aid. Hearing this, Dean lets go of him but still has questions. Surely, if Ran sent these rookies into the forest of the defeated, he must have told them about its truth. As it turns out, the monsters in this forest were once humans, and they all went into the forest with the same resolve and reason as Heo Seol-Jin and Lieber. However, look at what became of them. Although there are people who consider this forest a sacred place, in Dean's eyes, it is nothing but a curse placed on them by the tower. However, Ran announces that the thought of those two failing this test didn't even cross his mind. With clear eyes and a straight face, he proclaims, "I believe in them. If they fail, I will die along with them." Hearing this bold claim, even Dean is left taken aback. He reminisces about how long it has been since he and Ran had an argument in conversation like this, and so he decides to stop poking any further and takes his leave. Nevertheless, as he walks off, he tells Ran to never say things like that again. Although he can see Ran's confidence in them, to die by their side is not a responsibility he has to carry. Rather, he needs to trust them until the very end, no matter what happens. Back in the present, the demon continues to choke the life out of Heo Seol-Jin, squeezing harder and harder as she condemns him as a murderer. Of course, he tries to defend himself, telling her that her so-called precious children were the ones who attacked first. But his words fall on deaf ears. All of a sudden, Lieber tries to jump in and aid her master, but the demon stops her there, telling her, "If you move, this guy will die." There, the demon begins mocking the duo. She announces that their wish to climb up the tower is delusional. She has seen many like them, all of which have become a part of the forest. Moreover, now that she has caught them, she cannot allow them to go any further and suggests they just give up. Alas, Heo Seol-Jin refuses to go down. He tries to summon Excalibur, but all this does is prompt the demon to chop off one of his fingers. As the pain rushes throughout Heo Seol-Jin's body, he realizes this is all a trap. The first time they encountered the demon, she purposefully killed them in a flash to make sure they didn't feel pain and come back to find her. Meanwhile, the demon expresses how amazing the tower's domain is. Even though Heo Seol-Jin just lost a finger, he isn't even bleeding. However, he can still feel the pain. With this, he once again begins taunting the duo, telling them to go back and tell Ran that they are giving up. But that is something he cannot do. In the face of certain death, these words trigger something within Heo Seol-Jin, and he begins to pry open the demon's hands. Eventually, he manages to get right up in her face and announces, "I won't give up even if I die here," leaving the demon in utter disbelief. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, a thunderbolt strikes the ground, engulfing the demon and Heo Seol-Jin. From the sidelines, Lieber watches this all happen and is left shocked, finding this thunder familiar.